Hey guys, welcome back, and I got a special video for you. We're going to be taking a look at a game that I unboxed just a couple of weeks ago called Dungeon Degenerates. So if you haven't checked out that video, go back and check that one out. You'll kind of see what I'm referring to here in just a second. Which is when I opened that and when I looked through like the amount of tokens and the amount of stuff they had in there, I was like, oh man, this is the insert that came with it, and I honestly felt it just was not going to do it justice. The reason why is there's so many tokens, there's so many different decks of cards that, you know, technically one can just throw it all in here and be good to go. But the setup and all the amount of times it takes sorting all those for each session would just be a pain. So I said, well, let me look and see what it's going to take to actually come up with one. Or what it would take to come up with a custom insert for this. And I know a lot of people make those out of foam core. So let me try my hand at it. So this was the first one I made, and there wasn't any templates out there because, of course, the game is so new. So I thought, well, why don't I just kind of help out and got to go through that process. I've already built it. I've already got it done, but I wanted to show you guys and maybe even show you the measurements so you can see maybe how to make one your own.
Okay, so as you can see, what we have is everything. I have everything included in the box after the insert has been fully done. And as you can see, there's no gaps or anything to the end of the box. It actually does fit all in there. So I'll go ahead and show you guys what I've come up with. So the first thing we have inside is I have all the cards and the manuals and everything on top, and then the board game or the board for the game. And this is our first insert, and this is going to hold all of our tokens, and this holds our loot deck. This holds all the other small card deck down here. I was even able to find a spot for the sculpted hand, which I haven't painted or assembled yet, and the standee tokens. And beside those I have the little stands for those, so made away. So this is the first insert that I have that holds all of the various tokens for the game. And then the final one is the insert that holds all of the different decks of cards, like the full-size cards. Even these, able to put these little tokens in there for the game. And as you can see, they all stack upon each other and they fit right inside the game box there. So what we'll do now is, now that you've all seen that, I'm going to kind of go through the steps of how I created that, the process that I did to actually make that, and even some of the tools that I use. So I'm going to go ahead and start by taking all these cards out, and then I'll show you kind of how that looks, and then we'll go through the different tools that I used to just make sure you have everything you need to go ahead and get this started. I'll be right back. Alright, so we got all the cards taken out of the first insert, which is the one we're going to start with. And here are just the basic set of tools that I used in cutting out these foam cords. Now, as you can see here, these two pieces left, besides some little scrap pieces that I already threw away, this is all I had left from a full normal poster board size foam core, which you can go down any like school supply stores, I don't know, Walmart, Hobby Lobby, Michael's, whatever you want to, wherever you can probably find them, anywhere. Even grocery stores have them. This was about a $3 board, and this is the 3/16 inch thickness. You don't really need them any thicker than that. Once they get all glued down and all the different parts, it really makes them very, very sturdy. But this is all that was left after one of those sheets. I know they sell them in white. They'll sell them in like sometimes green, or, you know, I picked the black one just because I like how those complemented the colors in the game. So that was the first thing. I was like, I got a $3 board. All right, and the next thing is one of these hobby knives. And the one important thing about these hobby knives is their snap blades. So once this gets dull from all the cutting you do, you just snap that piece off, and you're left with a almost a brand new blade, you know, and just keep working that down. When you get them new, they're a lot longer. As you can see, I use that one. Been using it for a while. I think I probably snapped off about 2 or 3 of them once I was finished, after all was said and done. Another important thing is a metal ruler. This one's aluminum, and I have a cork on the back side. Now what this does is, when you're actually making your cuts on the foam board and you've already marked out where you want to cut, these the metal rulers are good, you know, when you're using your knife, to actually slide right across the ruler here and not dig into the ruler at all, since it's metal. and this will keep your cuts nice and straight, because you're wanting to cut straight down on here to get 90-degree cuts so that everything stands up good. You know, because if you're getting angled cuts like that, then they're not going to stand, or you're not going to be able to glue them down real well. You want a nice 90-degree angle on those cuts. Another one is glue. I just used, you know, cheap school glue. Doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be the strongest thing in the world. It was just cheap, easy to use, wipe off. It was, you know, I think it was washable school glue, whatever that is. So not a big deal there. Now, I know a lot of people will use like a cutting mat. I didn't have a lot of money to spend on it, so what I used is I just used a scrap piece of cardboard I had underneath when I was doing the cuts, and then when I was done with it, that was it. I just threw away the piece of cardboard. So really, you know, these are all the tools you're going to need. It'll probably, after all said and done, you might get away with that for less than $10 to get all the stuff you need, including the foam core itself. And then just comes in the next part, which is time. The first thing that we're going to start with, once you've purchased all the tools you're going to need, is actually making the cuts on the foam core. The very first thing I did was I said, okay, I know I have my box and I want to have my insert fit into there. So I took the measurements of the base box here where I want it to fit, and on the ruler I used the centimeters rather than the inches, because I felt like I was just getting a lot more precise measurements using the centimeters. They just had a lot more of the spaces that things actually fit on. So I already know this is a square box, but I went ahead and took the measurements of it. And the measurements that I got for it were right at little over 29 centimeters. And so I says, well, I'm going to go ahead and make it 29. That way it gives me about a 0.1 you know, little space in there to work with if I had to, so it didn't just like completely sandwich itself in the box and hard to get out. Alright, so this side too looked like it was right at about 29 centimeters, so I went ahead and made a 29 by 29 cut on the foam core. I used two corners. I started at a corner, so I had two straight lines to work with on the side, hoping that that's where they cut straight from the factory. And then I made a 29 centimeter cut down, a 29 centimeter cut across, and then I was left with a square 29 by 29 centimeter board to work with. So after I got the baseboard done, I went ahead and made I went ahead and cut 4 strips out for the side wall, which is where I started first. I went ahead and made 2 strips that were 29 centimeters. And now where did I get the thickness from? I knew that I wanted the thickness to be at least the thickness of the largest deck of cards that I was putting it in there. Now when I selected that, I think the Badlands Monster, or even not the Highlands, but like the Wetlands Monster, they were both about the same thickness. So it says, well, I'm just going to base it off of that to make sure that there's enough room to fit the deck of cards in there. So I measured the deck of cards out, which this one came to right at about 1 centimeter. So I was like, I at least want the thickness of the side walls and the runs here to be 29 centimeters, but I wanted to give it just a little more clearance, just to make sure that if the cards were out of tilt a little bit, they wouldn't slide over into something else. So I gave them just a tad to work with. So my measurement for the side walls, as you can see, is a little over 1 centimeter, probably about 1.1 centimeter. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. So I made the exact same size or the thickness cuts for the side walls. I made 2 side walls for 29 centimeters, and then I cut another 2 the exact same length, but I ended up trimming off just to fit them in the corners here. Now when I was done cutting those strips, all I had to do was glue them down to the outside, and all I did was I started with the outside edge and just made a box. Glued those down to the very outside, and then once I was done with that, I set it off to the side onto a stable surface, and then I set something heavy on there until the glue dried. What that gave me when it was done was I had a very stable surface on the outside. And then once that was done drying, I cut 3 more long strips, these right here, and these were, you know, I probably cut them to the same thing, 29 centimeters, and then just, you know, about a 1.1 centimeter thickness. And then I cut off the excess so they would fit in here. And I knew that I would have 4 rows, so I divided my 20, let's see what I had when I was, because these side walls, remember, about 3/16 of an inch. So I had about 28.1 centimeters to work with. So what I did was I took about 28.1, divided that by 4, because I need to have 4 spaces, and then marked my lines here on this side up here and this down here, and then just glued them on center of those marks that I made. So once I was done with that, I had my 4 columns, and then I said, well, I know what the cards are going to be sitting right here, so I put that in there and I measured off, and I was like, I know we're going to have 3 spaces in this this one column, so I just divided that by 3, and so I knew I had, and then I marked it on center where these were going to go, giving himself just a little bit of wiggle room because we knew that these were going to be a little bit more than a card. And so I just cut off these little notches here, about the exact same thickness, the 1.1 centimeters thick, and then just I cut these little things out and just glued them down. That was it. So after all that was said and done and these were dry, they were big enough to hold all the deck of cards, and I'll show you that here in just a second. Alright, so this is all the cards back in their space. Now, as you know, if you own the game, not all the decks of cards are as thick as the monster cards were, so we had a lot of extra room in these little spaces here. So that's where I was able to dump these tokens and be done with it there. So that was our first insert, so that just went right in there. Now what I did from here is I wanted to decide what extra room I had left to work with, so I just put everything back in, including all the what do you call this? The hero cards, the rule books, and everything like that. Spread them as even as I possibly could, and said I need to know how much room I have to work with for my next insert. So again, using the centimeters, I just marked it off and said, okay, I have right now, it looks like about maybe 1, 2, 3.5, you know, from what I'm looking at here, to get the next insert. So I was like, okay, well, I at least have that to work with. And then at the same time, here's our last one. I built this one around the thickness of the loot deck here. As you can see, that's probably the thickest deck in the game. That's why I didn't go in the other ones. I put that one by itself because if I put the loot deck in the other tray, if I tried to make room for it, number one, I would have had not enough space because that was 12 decks of cards, but this one would have been horrendously thick, and some of the other ones were just so thin, it would have been a lot of wasted space. So I says, well, this one can get added to the one tray. So again, same thing. I cut a 29 by 29 centimeter base that I started with. I made the side walls, and let's see, when we made the side walls, what did I end up with? Let's see, we got about 1, 2, 3 centimeters, okay, right there, 3 centimeter thick wall. So I made my 4 29 centimeter length and 3 centimeter thick walls, glued those down first. Once that was done, flipped it over, put some pressure on it to really set those in there. The next thing I did was I ran a single run here to cover the deck of cards, and then to kind of split off this space here. And this one was also about 29 centimeter, but then I cut it down to fit inside the box. Then I made another cut. These were also, this was a 3. This is all going to be, the thickness or the width of these cuts are going to be 3 centimeter. But you might want to check that if you're actually making your own cuts as well, just to make sure it works. So we made another one that was a little bit, probably about 2 inches shorter. I say 2 inches, 2 centimeters. I'm just kind of interchanging those things. But anyway, so I made another run, probably cut about a 29 centimeter long piece, and then cut off the access that I didn't want to use here for the loot cards, just to kind of fill in this space here, and to break off these sections here where I have these smaller cards. Now where I have the smaller cards, I also did the same thing before. I cut these little notches here and then just glued those in by themselves. Just enough room to get your thumb in there. And then from the point where that is, I just went up about 1 centimeter up to the top there. And you can make that your own style. I mean, there's so many different things you can do with that. Even for this though, for the loot deck, what I did was I glued this whole thing down first, and then I cut this after all was still kind of drying, after everything had pretty much set, and I was able to pull that out because I wanted a way to reach those loot cards very easily without having to break into this wall here because of the tokens. I didn't want them spilling out. So after this section was done, I made, these are straight runs, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight runs that butted up against this wall here. I needed 8 spaces here for all the larger size tokens, or the larger quantity tokens. So I'd already kind of put all this on graph paper to see how it was going to look. So I made those sections, and then once I made those straight runs and then measured out what I was going to need in here, you know, I marked it on center on each side and then glued those down. They were just, you just cut strips and just put those in there. Same thing here, I needed 20 pockets for all the smaller size tokens and just made these cuts in there, and that was it. There's no finger grabs or like spaces for that because they were large enough to get your fingers into. And then after that was all said and done, it was just waiting for it to dry and then getting it all in there, and then voila. All right, so wasn't quite an instruction tutorial on really the details of how to make one. It was just showing you how it looks and how the compartments were. What I am going to do though is post up probably some stills at the end of this video, so if you want to see those, they'll actually show some measurements and how everything actually is. So if you want to look at that in more detail, they'll be there at the end of the video as well. The comment sections are a great place. If you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to add a comment there, and I will get to it as soon as I can. This is a fun project for me. Never done an insert before. I've always seen them done. I was like, man, it looks like it would take so much work to do, but really, honestly, it didn't take that much time. The planing, I think, was probably the largest part of it, not actually getting down and doing the cuts. Like I said, the tools, really easy. You can get them anywhere. Cheap stuff, but man, does it seem like it holds up real well. So anyway, I'll get that information out to you on the comments and the end of the video here and anything else. There was also another YouTube video that I watched that kind of gave me the basic principles for how to do foam core inserts, and I will also post that video up in the description of this video, so you can kind of go to that and see. I may even have put it on a tag at the very beginning of the video. Let's see if I can even remember to do that. So anyway, that's it. I appreciate you guys sticking around, checking that out. Hopefully soon I will start the solo runs of this game, Dungeon Degenerates, and see if that actually starts making it on the channel really soon. Maybe in the next week or so I should have that first on the run mission out there. So thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you guys next time.